I've been a state trooper for nearly a decade now, patrolling stretches of highway and rural areas where help can take a long time to arrive. I've seen some strange things, but one call I got on a late summer night still stands out as the most unsettling. It was about 11:30 p.m. when dispatch sent me to investigate a report from a couple driving through a remote area near the state forest. They called in terrified, saying they'd heard a woman screaming in the woods, near a well-known hiking trail that hadn't been used in years. The couple's car had stopped on the side of the road. They weren't sure if someone was hurt or if it was something else, but the screams sounded desperate, like someone was in real trouble. I wasn't far away, so I got there in a couple minutes. When I pulled up to the roadside, the couple was still in their car, visibly shaken. They told me the scream had lasted several minutes, piercing, loud enough to make their blood run cold. But when they tried to get out and call for help, the sound stopped suddenly. That alone set off warning bells for me. The forest was dark, thick with trees that swallowed any moonlight. I grabbed my flashlight, radioed dispatch to keep the call open in case the screaming started again, and started walking towards the trailhead the couple had pointed to. At first it was quiet. Too quiet. No rustling leaves, no sounds of animals, nothing. I thought it was maybe a prank, or someone was messing with people, but I kept moving forward. Then, about 200 yards into the woods, I heard it again. A blood-curdling scream that seemed to come from all around me. It was impossible to tell exactly where it was coming from, like the forest itself was screaming. My heart started racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. I kept calling out, asking if anyone was hurt or needed help. No answer. Just silence, except for the occasional distant call of an owl. I pressed deeper, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the trees and brush. The screams never came back. Then, as I reached a small clearing, I saw something strange. A makeshift campfire ring with stones, but no fire. Around it, there was multiple scattered items. A torn jacket, a broken cell phone, and some empty bottles. It looked like someone had been there recently, but left in a hurry. I radioed dispatch again and requested backup and medical teams just in case. While waiting, I circled the clearing, looking for any sign of a person, but there was none. That's when I noticed footprints, barefoot, heading away from the clearing toward a narrow path leading further into the woods. I decided to follow them. The trail was faint, barely visible under leaves and pine needles, winding deeper into the forest. The moon was hidden behind clouds now, and the darkness closed in around me. Every snap of a twig underfoot sounded deafening. After maybe 15 minutes, I came to a steep embankment that dropped down to a small creek. The footprints stopped there. As I shone my light across the water, I saw something that made me freeze. There, pressed into the mud, was a handprint. Large, but smeared, as if someone had struggled. And near it, deep scratches gouged into the bark of a tree, claw marks. That's when the screaming came back, right behind me. It was close, raw, and filled with pure terror. I spun around, flashlight swinging wildly through the trees, but again, no one was there, just shadows. I called out, but only silence answered. The hairs on my neck stood up. I decided then to back away slowly towards the road. As I walked, I kept hearing faint whispers behind me, indistinct voices carried in the wind, almost like someone calling my name. By the time I reached the roadside, backup had arrived. We searched the whole area extensively, and no person was found. No evidence other than the abandoned camp, and those footprints leading nowhere. Over the next few days, locals told me stories about the forest. Tales of a woman who vanished years ago after going on a solo hike, whose screams were said to still echo at night. Some thought it was a spirit trapped between worlds. I don't know if I believe in ghosts, but that night left me with no doubt that something was very wrong out there. Even now, when I drive past that stretch of road late at night, I find myself glancing into the trees, wondering if I'll ever hear that scream again. I've been working as a patrol officer in a quiet suburban town for a little over 6 years now. Most of my night shifts are routine. Alarm checks, suspicious vehicle reports, the occasional domestic call. Nothing you'd call terrifying. But every now and then, you get a call that doesn't leave you. One that keeps replaying in your head long after your shift ends. For me, it was a 911 hang-up from a local assisted living facility just out of town. It was a Friday morning, about 2:15 a.m. Dispatch said a call came through from the care home, but when the operator picked it up, there was nothing but silence on the line. Then it disconnected. They tried calling back, but no one answered. Standard protocol says that we treat every 911 hang-up as an emergency until proven otherwise, so I was sent out to check. When I pulled into the parking lot, the building looked dark, except for a few security lights along the roof and a dim glow coming from the lobby window. I walked up to the front entrance and buzzed in. After a moment, a nurse opened the door. She looked tired and confused, like I'd just woken her up from a nap. I told her why I was there, and she shook her head. No one called 911, she said. At least not from here. I've been at the desk all night, and our residents don't have access to phones in their rooms. I asked if she could check the staff phones or the hallway phones in case someone accidentally bumped one. She looked at the monitor on her desk, flipped through some log sheets, and then back up at me. Everything's clear, she said. No outgoing calls from any of our lines. I could have just marked it as a false call and left, but I decided to do a quick walkthrough of the halls anyways, just to be safe. She offered to come with me, but I told her it was fine. I'd just make a sweep and head out. The place smelled like disinfectant and old wood. The kind of smell that never really goes away in buildings like that. It was quiet. No TVs, no talking. Just the hum of ceiling lights and the distant beeping of medical equipment. Most of the hallway lights were off, except for small night lights along the floors that gave off a dull yellow glow. It made everything feel off, like I was walking through a place that wasn't meant to be seen at night. I was moving down the east wing, a straight hallway with about a dozen rooms, when I saw something at the very end. A man, just standing there. He looked to be in his 80s or 90s, thin, frail-looking, tall. He was wearing a hospital gown that hung loosely off his shoulders, and he was barefoot. He wasn't facing me, just standing there, staring at a wall across from him. I paused. It startled me, because I hadn't heard any doors open, and I was sure I'd been alone in the hallway just seconds before. I called out, "Sir, are you okay? Do you need help?" No response. He didn't turn or flinch, just stood there like a statue. I took a few steps closer and raised my voice. "Sir, it's the police. Are you feeling all right?" Still no reaction. I started walking towards him more carefully. Something about the way he was standing just felt wrong. Too still. His posture didn't shift. His shoulders didn't rise and fall like he was breathing. It was like he wasn't really there. And then, just as I was maybe 15 feet away from him, the hallway lights flickered. Not for long, maybe half a second, but long enough for me to lose sight of him. When the lights came back on, he was gone. Completely. There were no open doors nearby, no sound of footsteps, no dragging of feet, nothing. I jogged the rest of the hallway, looking at every door I passed. Each room had a sleeping resident, or was completely empty. I checked the bathrooms, the linen closets, even behind the nurse supply cart. Nothing. I even radioed dispatch to ask if the 911 call had any specific room number attached to it. They said the location pinged from the east wing, but that was as specific as it got. I was just about to head back and chalk the whole thing up to exhaustion, maybe even a trick of the light, when I passed by the nurse's desk again. She looked up and asked if I'd seen anything. I hesitated, then described the man I saw. Tall, pale, hospital gown, standing barefoot at the end of the east wing. Her expression changed immediately. "Did you say barefoot?" she asked. I nodded. She opened a binder from behind the desk and flipped through a few pages before stopping on one. It was an obituary, printed out and taped inside the SAF logbook. A man named Walter H., 89 years old. He had passed away the previous week in his sleep. Room 38, she said, tapping on the corner of the page. "That's the last room in the east wing, right where you said you saw him." She showed me the photo in the obituary. It was him. Same face, same empty stare. I didn't know what to say. I've seen some weird things on the job before, but nothing like that. Nothing that makes your skin go cold in the middle of the night. Nothing that follows you home in your head and keeps you up at night. I walked back to my cruiser in silence, wrote my report, and tried to put it out of my mind. But I've thought about that night more times than I care to admit. I've been back to that care home a few times since. Never had another incident, never saw him again. But every time I pass that hallway, I slow down, and I keep one eye on the end of it, because I'm not convinced that call was an accident. Something wanted me there, and I think I saw exactly what. I've been a sheriff's deputy in a rural part of Missouri for over a decade now. Most nights are pretty routine, maybe a drunk driver, a noise complaint, or someone trying to start trouble at the gas station. But every so often, there's a night that just doesn't leave you, one that keeps you up even years later. For me, it was a 911 call that came in at around 2:45 in the morning. Dispatch let me know that they got a strange call, just a few seconds long, a woman's voice whispering something too quiet to understand. Then the line went dead. Normally, that wouldn't be enough to raise alarms, but because it came from a landline, I was asked to go check it out. The call was traced to a house way out in the country, down a road barely anyone uses anymore. I'd driven past the turnoff before, but never had a reason to go down it. The mailbox at the end of the driveway was rusted and the numbers were faded to nothing. Just getting out there was eerie. Completely dark, no lights from other homes, not even a porch light on this one. When I pulled up, I could already tell something was off. The house looked old and abandoned, not falling apart exactly, but untouched. The yard was overgrown, and the gravel driveway had weeds growing through it like no one had driven on it in years. I checked in with dispatch, letting them know what I saw, and as I was getting out of my cruiser, they told me a second call had just come in through the same number. This time there was no voice at all, just silence before the line cut off again. That was enough for me to go in and take a look. The front door wasn't locked. Inside, it looked like a time capsule. Furniture covered in sheets, everything coated in a layer of dust, the kind of scene where you wonder if someone just got up one day and never came back. There were family photos still on the walls, faded and sun-bleached. I didn't see any movement, no signs of recent activity, but the air inside was ice cold, way colder than it should have been for springtime. I was doing a sweep of the main floor when I heard a sound from upstairs. It was faint but distinct, a soft clicking noise. It took a second to register, but I realized that it sounded exactly like an old rotary phone being dialed. I went upstairs, carefully checking each room as I went. The first two were completely empty bedrooms, nothing unusual, but the third door was cracked open, and that's where I saw it. A small room with wallpaper peeling off the walls, and on a nightstand sat a beige rotary phone, completely out of place in today's world. The receiver was off the hook, and there was a steady dial tone humming from the earpiece. I gently put the receiver back in place, and the sound stopped. But just as I turned to leave the room, I heard footsteps downstairs. Not fast, not panicked, just slow and heavy, like someone walking through the living room. I called out to identify myself and asked whoever was down there to make themselves known, but no one answered. I moved quickly down the stairs, weapon ready, and checked the entire first floor again. Nothing had moved. The front door was shut tight. I even checked every window. Still no sign of a break-in, no sign of anyone at all. At that point, I remembered I hadn't checked the basement yet. I opened the door and shined my flashlight down. The steps were narrow and steep. The basement itself was mostly empty. Just some boxes, a rusted workbench, and a few tools lying around. Thick cobwebs hung everywhere. There was no way someone could have been down there without disturbing all the dust and webs. It hadn't been touched in years. Eventually, I called it in and told dispatch that the house was clear. I figured maybe the call was just a fluke, a crossed wire, or some old system glitching out. But then dispatch got back to me with an update. They'd looked into the phone number that made the calls. It had been disconnected since 2003. No active service provider, no recent account history. It wasn't even listed in the current database. That made the hair on my neck stand up. As I was taking one last look before leaving, I noticed a picture frame near the stairs that I'd missed before. It was partially hidden behind a curtain. It showed a family, husband, wife, and a little girl, standing in front of that very house, smiling. The woman's face struck me as familiar, though I couldn't place why at the time. I took a photo of the picture and sent it in, asking dispatch to look up who used to live there. A few minutes later, they told me that the house belonged to the Langford family. In 2003, the father and daughter had been found murdered inside the home. The mother had vanished. No signs of a struggle, no suspects. The case had gone cold years ago. No one had lived there since. Right around then, I stepped outside to get some air. The sun was just starting to rise, and I figured I'd seen everything there was to see. But something pulled my attention back to the house one more time. I looked up at the second floor window, the room where the rotary phone had been, and I swear the curtain moved. It didn't fall. It didn't blow in the wind. It moved, as if someone had gently pulled it back to look out. Just a small, deliberate motion. But when I looked closer, there was no one there. When backup arrived, we swept the house again. Nothing had changed. It was exactly the same. And to this day, no one's been able to explain how that phone line made those calls. I later found out that since that night, dispatch had received 3 more calls from the same number. Each one happens late at night, and each one silent. They don't send anyone out alone anymore, and I've never gone back to that house. Thanks for listening to these true, chilling police encounters. If you enjoyed these stories, I would greatly appreciate it if you would like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss out on what's coming next. Thank you.